a story that you're bringing to fore, and that is by the way of social media influencers. We now know that they're supposed to be acting more responsibly because they're not going to be treated as just social media influencers anymore. If you have a certain number of people who subscribe to you, who like you, who are viewing you on a daily basis, you are a celebrity.
Yeah, so
and therefore have responsibility.
So the definition has been broadened by the ASCI, the Advertising Standards Council of India. So anybody who has 50,000 followers, 500,000 followers, and earns more than 40 lakhs, half a million, and earns more than 40 lakhs a year, now gets celebrity status, which basically adds more responsibility to him or her, that every time they are taking on a brand endorsement, they have to adhere to certain rules. So that is broadly what has happened, what the ASCI has done right now. There were lapses in people who were taking on endorsements, and that happens all the time. And just to curb that and bring these people, make these people also responsible, because they are exerting influence. 500,000 is quite a big number, even though it's a small number considering the population of India.
Come to think of it, not very big number.
But maybe at least in social media followings, this is the minimum number. We know people, influencers are in multi-millions also, a number of followers they have. So they have just added, they have been given some responsibility now, and that can be challenged in court if they don't adhere to it.
And that responsibility is important, critical, because they are now endorsing a variety of products, of services. We talked about Finfluencer on this show, where a lot of influencers are not so objectively trying to endorse a certain financial service, a route, an SIP perhaps, but all of that, of course, SEBI took note of that. But apart from that, generic things, products that we use on a daily basis, things we eat, things we consume, all of that is now being endorsed not by biggies who can be held accountable, but by social media influencers.
Not just that, Shweta,
with maybe perhaps 500,000 and less number of following.
So there's another scam of sorts also going on in the world, and this was something reported by the New York Times about 2 days back. An Indian origin gentleman, I don't know if I can call him a gentleman, by the name of Roy Singham, a US-based entrepreneur, has relocated to China, and his key responsibility right now is to get Indian influencers down to China and get them to record videos about the great infrastructure in China, the great tourism opportunities in China, and also the fact that, hey, the Chinese economy is doing great and there is no COVID, there is no lockdown, there is no problem, the factories are doing great. So Roy Singham's modus operandi is to get Indian influencers down to China and get them, and this again according to the New York Times report, get them to paint a very rosy picture about China for their followers back in India. Now this also obviously becomes something of national interest if we are talking about an enemy state like China, and Indian influencers really praising that country for their audiences back in India. If it's done objectively, no problem. If they're paid for it, obviously it is advertising. Now the challenge with the guidelines or the norms issued time and again by ASCI is that these continue to be only guidelines. There is no enforcement. Now, what does celebrity status really do for these influencers? They need to be more responsible. I mean, they need to treat every endorsement more responsibly. What happens if they don't?
What happens if they don't?
They have a system of blacklisting celebrities. That ASCI does have.
ASCI in its own,
it's a toothless body.
It's a toothless body.
They have influence within the community of endorsements, endorsers. So within brands, because ASCI caters to or influences advertising agencies, which are in direct cahoots.
I think it warrants that we discuss this further, perhaps at 4 p.m. today. If not today,
4
maybe.
4 p.m. is not going to happen. Prime Minister is
maybe
speaking in Lok Sabha at 4
maybe
p.m.
tomorrow.
today.
But gentlemen, we've run out of time. Thanks very much for watching us here on News9.